Right now, in a warm room, with nothing hunting you, a wave of tiny bumps just rose across your skin. Maybe it was a song, maybe a line in a film, or a memory that arrived without knocking. The back of your neck prickled. The hair on your arms stood up. A cool ripple moved over you, and then it was gone. You are one of 8 billion people carrying a reflex older than your species. It fired in animals that lived and died millions of years before the first human face existed. And it just fired in you, at a desk, over nothing you could touch. Because nothing happened. No wind, no cold, no teeth in the dark. Something invisible moved you. A sound, a thought, a feeling, and your body answered as if the world had changed. And a small part of you may have felt faintly silly for it. A grown adult, skin bristling at a chorus. But hold on to this until the end. There are thousands of tiny muscles in your skin, and at this moment, some of them are straining to do a job that ended over 1 million years ago. They are reaching for something you no longer have. And the chill a song sends up your arm is the ghost of it, standing up. Let's go find out what they're reaching for. Start with what a goosebump actually is. It is not your skin doing something odd. It is a muscle, a real one, with a name. At the base of every hair on your body sits a tiny slip of muscle called the arrector pili. It is thinner than a thread. You have millions of them laid across your arms and legs and neck and scalp, and each one knows a single, simple move. It pulls. When it contracts, it tugs its hair upright and puckers the skin at the root into a small dome. Multiply that by a few 100,000, all at once, and a wave of them rises together across your skin. Here is the part that matters. You did not decide to do that. You cannot. There is no button for it, no muscle you can flex on command the way you close your hand. These muscles answer to a different government entirely, the ancient automatic nervous system that runs your heartbeat and your breath and your fear without ever asking you. It is the same system that dumps adrenaline into your blood when a car swerves toward you. When it fires everywhere at once, and your hair stands up whether you like it or not. So this was never a decision, it was always an alarm. Now, why would a body evolve an alarm that lifts its own hair? Look at almost any other mammal, and the answer is obvious, because on them, it still works. Watch a cat meet a dog. In half a second, it doubles. Its fur stands straight out, its tail swells to a bottle brush, and a small animal becomes a big one without moving an inch. It didn't grow, it bristled. Every hair yanked upright by millions of those same tiny muscles, turning a house pet into something you would think twice about. A frightened porcupine does a fiercer version of the same trick, and so does almost every furred creature that has ever been cornered. That is the first ancient job, size. For an animal in a fight for its life, looking bigger can end the fight before it begins. A bristling creature says, without a sound, do not. And there is a second job, quieter and just as old, warmth. Picture a small bird on a freezing morning, puffed into a round ball twice its normal size. It is not sick, it is trapping heat. Lifting every feather opens a layer of still air against the skin, and still air is one of the finest blankets on Earth. Furred animals do exactly the same thing. Raise the coat, thicken the pocket of warm air held inside it, and you keep the heat you cannot afford to lose. On a cold dawn, that reflex is the difference between waking up and not. So walk back into the body of one of your distant ancestors, deep in the animal line, long before language. A cold, gray dawn on an open plain. The temperature drops, and before any thought can form, the coat rises on its own and holds a skin of warm air against the body. Later, a shape shifts in the tall grass. The heart slams, the blood floods with alarm, and the fur stands along the shoulders and the spine, and the creature is suddenly larger, harder to swallow, more trouble than it is worth. The muscle pulled, the coat lifted. It did exactly what it was built to do, and its owner lived to pass it down, to you. Now look down at your own arm. Where is the coat? This is the strange, quiet twist at the center of all of it. Somewhere across the long walk of human evolution, your ancestors shed their fur. You do not have the thick pelt anymore, just fine, faint hairs, most of them barely visible, standing over bare skin that shows the whole thing plainly. The muscle still fires. It still pulls with the exact same ancient signal it has always used, but there is almost nothing left to raise. So you don't puff up. You don't look bigger. You don't trap a warm blanket of air. You get the dimple, the small dome, the faint prickle, the movement of a coat that isn't there. The reflex has outlived the reason for it. You are running an animal's alarm on a body that deleted the fur 1,000,000 years ago, and the alarm has never once been told. A newborn does it too, in the first days of life, long before anyone could teach it. It is not a habit, it is inheritance. Which leaves a real question. If the fur is gone, why hasn't the reflex gone with it? And why, of all things, does it answer to music? Because the trigger got wired into something new. Remember, these muscles obey your alarm system, the automatic circuitry of fear and arousal. In an animal, that system speaks only the language of cold and threat. But as your ancestors' brains swelled, and their lives filled up with song and story, and the faces of the people they loved, that same old system reached into new territory. It began to fire not just at danger, but at meaning, at awe, at a rising chorus, a turning point in a story, a moment almost too big to hold in one chest. The alarm learned to ring for beauty. Scientists have a name for that particular shiver, frisson. And when neuroscientists at McGill University scanned people in the exact moment music was giving them chills, they watched the brain flood itself with dopamine, the same chemical reward it releases for food, for sex, for the things evolution treats as worth living for. The wave up your arm is your oldest alarm firing a reward, telling you without a single word, this one matters. Charles Darwin saw the thread a century and a half ago. In his book on the expression of emotion in 1872, he wrote about the involuntary bristling of hair in frightened and furious animals and in frightened and furious people, and understood it as one ancient reflex your own kind had simply never stopped sharing with them. He had no brain scans. He could see it anyway. And here is the last surprise, the one that turns the whole thing warm. That little muscle may not be so useless after all. In 2020, researchers at Harvard found that the arrector pili does more than yank a hair. It physically bridges the nerve to the stem cells that grow new hair. Cold air fires the muscle, and the muscle helps wake those cells and rebuild the coat over time. The ghost, it turns out, still tends the garden. Even now, on your bare arm, it is quietly holding down a second job you never knew it had. So think about what your skin is actually doing when it rises. You are in a warm room, you are not cold, and nothing is hunting you. A song swells, or someone says the exact right thing, or a memory lands with its full weight, and a wave lifts every fine hair on your arm. Your body has just reached back across 1,000,000 years, pulled the string on a coat that no longer exists, and raised it to salute a piece of music, to answer a kindness, to mark a moment your thinking mind had not even finished deciding was important. You have been taught that it's random, or that it's just the cold, or that it's a little embarrassing, this bristling at a chorus like a startled cat. It is none of those things. It is the most honest thing your body does. It cannot lie, and it cannot be faked. It fires beneath you and before you at whatever actually moved you, and it tells you the truth a half second before your careful mind can talk you out of it. So the next time a song lifts the hair on your arm in a warm, safe room, and some part of you wants to feel foolish, don't. That is a muscle older than humanity, doing the one thing it has always done, reaching for a coat that is gone, standing up for something that mattered. Right now, in a warm room, with nothing hunting you, a wave of tiny bumps just rose across your skin. Now you know what stood up, and now you know it was never nothing. You are looking at a flame. Maybe it's a campfire, maybe it's a fireplace, or a gas ring on the stove, or one candle on a table nobody has cleared yet. The flame moves, and you follow it, and somewhere in the middle of that, without deciding to, you stop thinking. Your shoulders come down, your jaw lets go. Someone says your name, and it takes you a full second to come back into the room. Nobody taught you to do that. That pull is older than farming, older than every language on Earth, older than your species. It has been happening in the dark for more than 1,000,000 years, and your body still runs the program tonight, in a heated room, in a city, with the door locked. Here is the part that should bother you. You already hold a light in your hand almost every night. It glows, it flickers. You stare into it in the dark for an hour before sleep, exactly the way your ancestors stared into theirs. And you do not come away calm. You come away wired and hollow, and somehow more tired than when you started. Your ancestors had something that switched their whole nervous system off at the end of every single day. You replaced it with something that does the opposite, and nobody told you that a trade had been made. Start with how old this is, because the age of it is the whole argument. Deep inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, far past the point any wildfire could have reached on its own, there are burned bones and layers of ash. Recent work on that cave pushes the fire use there back beyond 1 million years. That is not a lightning strike sweeping through an open plain. That is fire carried inward, on purpose, into the dark, and then kept alive. At a lakeside site in Israel called Gesher Ben Not Yaakov, burned wood and burned seeds and cracked heat-shocked flint sit clustered in small patches, roughly 790,000 years old. And the clustering is the whole point. The burning is not smeared across the site. It happens in spots. Somebody chose where. Then, at Kesem Cave, also in Israel, there is a hearth about 300,000 years old that was used again and again and again in the same place across generations. Ash resting on ash, thin as pages, a fixed address for the fire. Sit with what a fixed hearth actually means. Not warmth, not safety, not light. It means a place everybody knows to be after dark. Your species invented the meeting point before it invented the wheel. So what happened at that meeting point? The famous answer is food. The researcher Richard Wrangham has argued for years that cooking is the thing that made us human, that heat breaks food down before your gut has to, so a smaller intestine and a larger, hungrier brain suddenly become affordable. It's a strong idea. Much of it holds up. But notice what it explains. It explains your stomach. It explains your skull. It does not explain, even slightly, why you go quiet when you look at a flame. For that, you have to look at what people actually do around fires, and someone did. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years with the Juohansi in the Kalahari, and she did something nobody had bothered to do. She recorded conversations by time of day, daytime talk and firelight talk, side by side, the same people, over 170 conversations. Daytime talk was almost entirely business. Who was going where, who did not share what they promised, complaints, arguments, land, hunting plans, and a steady current of criticism aimed at anyone getting above themselves. It was useful. It was also a little exhausting. Then the sun went down, and the same mouths did something else. At the fire, the talk turned. It went to stories, to people who weren't there and people who were dead, to singing and to the spirit world, and to long tellings about ancestors nobody in that circle had met. The arguments of the afternoon got smoothed over rather than prosecuted. Nobody was solving anything. Everybody was imagining together. That is the twist, and it is easy to read past it, so slow down here. Fire's real gift was not heat. It was not eating the cooked meat. It was a fourth block of time in the day that had no work in it. Before fire, the day had 3 parts, and all 3 of them were spent staying alive. Find food, eat, sleep. The dark was simply a lid closing. Fire pried the lid up and made a room under it, 3 or 4 hours long, that could not be used for foraging, could not be used for hunting, could not be used for travel. Hours with no possible productive use. And into that useless space, a species poured stories, music, gossip about distant relatives, laughing, and the slow repair of the day's small injuries. Everything you think of as culture grew in the one part of the day when nothing could be achieved. And your body learned to expect that room. This is the part that has actually been measured. A researcher named Christopher Lynn ran a set of studies with more than 200 adults, and he took the fire apart to see which piece was doing the work. Some people watched a fire with the sound turned off. Some watched the same fire with the crackle left in. Some got a control with no fire at all. Then he checked their blood pressure. The muted fire did very little. The fire with its sound in it brought blood pressure down, and it brought it down further the longer people sat with it. The effect was strongest in people who fall easily into absorbed states, and strongest in the people who lean most toward others. So it was never the picture of a flame. A photograph of fire is not the thing. What calms you is the whole animal experience of it. Moving light, and the popping and radiant heat on the front of your body while your back stays cool, and the shape of other people sitting in a ring at the edge of it. Your nervous system is not reading a flame. It is reading a situation, and the situation says, the day is finished, everyone is here, nothing more is required of you. Now look at the thing in your hand. It has the flicker. It kept exactly one piece and threw away all the rest. Light with no warmth. Sound that arrives sealed inside your ears instead of filling a space around you. Faces, but no bodies, and none of them are actually in the room. Information where the story used to be. And instead of a circle of people who all agreed the day was over, one person, alone, horizontal, in the dark. Then there is the last difference, and it may be the worst one. A fire ends. It burns down whether you want it to or not. The talk gets slower as the light gets lower, and eventually there are only embers, and the ending is decided by physics and not by your willpower. Your feed has no embers. It cannot burn down. There is no point at which the wood runs out and your body is allowed to believe the day is complete. So when you're lying there at 1 a.m, unable to power down, knowing exactly what you should do and doing the other thing anyway, understand what is actually happening. That is not a character defect. That is not weak discipline. You are a creature whose off switch was never installed on the inside. It was external. For 1,000,000 years it sat in the middle of camp. It was made of wood. It was tended by whoever was awake, and it went out on its own schedule. You never needed the strength to end your own day. You just had to sit near the thing that ended it for you. Then, in about 2 generations, we took the fire out of the middle of the room, replaced it with a rectangle that never goes out, and started calling the resulting exhaustion a personal failing. The inheritance is still there, though. That's the good news, and it is smaller and easier than the wellness industry would like it to be. It doesn't take a campfire. A candle counts. The gas ring counts. A fireplace, a fire pit, a stove flame with the kitchen light off. What seems to matter is that it moves, that you can hear it, that it warms the front of you, and that if at all possible, somebody else is sitting there too, not fixing anything, talking about people who aren't in the room. You are not treating a symptom when you do that. You are giving a very old body the one signal it has been waiting all day to receive. So tonight, if you get the chance, let something burn. Sit closer than you need to. Let the talk go somewhere useless. And when the moment comes that you stop thinking and your shoulders drop, and it takes you a second to hear your own name, don't apologize for drifting. Nobody taught you to do that. Something 1,000,000 years older than you already knew the way home. The beat drops and your foot is already moving. You didn't decide that. Nobody asked you. Somewhere between your ear and your ankle, a decision got made without you, and by the time you notice it, your head is nodding along like it belongs to somebody else. Look down. Your body just did something you never taught it to do. Now stretch that backward. Not to last year, not to the invention of recorded sound, which is barely older than your great-grandmother. Stretch it back past every song you know, past every instrument, past writing, past farming, past the end of the last ice age, and you will still find human beings keeping time in the dark. Here is the part that stings. You have more music within reach right now than every human who lived before your great-grandparents put together, and you almost certainly listen to it alone, in headphones, in a car, in a room with the door shut, while a machine quietly guesses what you might like next. That loneliness is not an accident, and it is not a personal failure, because music did not evolve to be listened to. It evolved to be done. And there is one thing it does to a human body that no pair of headphones has ever managed, the exact thing your ancestors were reaching for every single time they opened their mouths together. Hold on to that. Everything else leads there. Start with the widest fact anyone has established about your species. There has never been a human society without music. Not one. When a team of researchers led by Samuel Mayer assembled the ethnographic record of song from cultures all over the world and published it in the journal Science, that was the headline. Music showed up everywhere they looked. Not just everywhere, but in the same handful of situations, over and over, in societies that had never heard of each other. People sang to dance, people sang to heal, people sang to court each other, and people sang to babies. Think about how odd that is. Cultures disagree about almost everything. They disagree about gods, about food, about who you may marry, about what counts as a crime. But every single one of them, independently, arrived at organized sound. You can watch the same instinct in a person far too young to have been taught it. In a study by Marcel Zentner and Tuomas Arela, more than 100 infants, some as young as 5 months, long before they could walk or speak, were played music, rhythmic drum beats, and recordings of speech. The babies moved to the music. They moved much less to the talking. When the tempo sped up, their movement sped up, And here is the detail that gets me. The babies who matched the beat most closely were the ones who smiled the most. Nobody trained them. They arrived with it. So the instinct is old, but how old? For a long time, that question had no hard floor, because voices do not fossilize, and neither do clapping hands. Then, in a cave in southwestern Germany called Hohlefels, an archaeologist named Nicholas Conrad and his colleagues pulled 12 fragments of hollow bone out of the ground. Fitted back together, they made a flute. It had been carved from the wing bone of a griffin vulture. It had 5 finger holes and a V-shaped notch cut into one end, and it is somewhere in the range of 40,000 years old, made by some of the very first modern humans to settle that corner of Europe. Sit with the craftsmanship for a second. Somebody chose that bone. Somebody knew which bird's wing was hollow enough, straight enough, long enough. Somebody worked out where to put the holes so the notes would land where they wanted them, and then taught somebody else, because a 5-hole flute is not a first attempt, it is a refinement. Picture the night it belonged to. A cold valley, 40,000 years ago. A river below, mammoth country beyond it. A group of maybe 20 or 30 people, most of them related, all of them tired, tucked under an overhang of rock as the light goes out of the sky. Somebody starts a rhythm, not a song yet, just a hand on a thigh, a heel on stone, something steady enough to lean on. Somebody else joins. Then the voices, low and wordless, sliding around each other until they lock. A child hits the beat wrong and gets it right on the next pass. And over the top of all of it, thin and clear, comes the vulture bone. Nobody under that ledge is performing. There is no audience, there is no stage, and no one is any good. And it does not matter in the slightest, because the point of what they are doing is not the sound. Watch their bodies instead. 30 people who spent the whole day scattered across a valley, competing, arguing, dividing food, are now breathing at the same rate. That is the entire trick, and it took modern science an embarrassingly long time to notice it. Here is where the story turns on you. That flute is not the beginning of music. It cannot be. A carved instrument with 5 tuned holes is what appears at the end of a long tradition, not the start of one. The way a printing press is not the beginning of storytelling. The flute is a receipt. It is proof that by 40,000 years ago, music was already so established, so obviously worth the trouble, that people were spending scarce hours and scarce material building machines to make more of it. Which means the first instrument came long before, and you are carrying it. Your voice, your hands, your feet, your lungs. And music's job was never beauty. Beauty is a side effect. Its job was to solve a problem your ancestors could not solve any other way. How do you hold a large group of people together? Other primates do it by grooming, one-on-one, fingers through fur, hours of it. That works, but it does not scale, because you cannot groom 30 individuals in an evening. Sound scales. A voice reaches everybody at once. And when the researcher Robin Dunbar and his colleagues tested what synchronized movement actually does to a body, what they found was chemical. People who danced in time with others showed a raised pain threshold afterward, a standard proxy for endorphin release, and reported feeling closer to the strangers they had danced with. People who moved out of sync got neither. The bonding did not come from the music being good, it came from the bodies matching. There is more. In a set of experiments by Scott Wiltermuth and Chip Heath, people were asked to walk in step, or sing together, or move in time, and then play economic games in which cooperating cost them something personally. The ones who had synchronized cooperated more. And it was not simply because moving together put them in a good mood, because the researchers checked that. Something underneath mood had already decided that these were now their people. That is the payoff your ancestors were chasing every night, not entertainment. Not art, a shortcut into other human beings, a way to walk into the dark as 30 separate anxious animals and walk out as one thing that trusts itself. Now come back. Look at what you did with that inheritance. You perfected the sound and deleted the room. Your headphones deliver a fidelity no ancient human could have imagined, every breath and every string, straight into your skull, where exactly one person can hear it. Your playlist knows you better than your neighbors do. You can hear 10,000 voices tonight and be heard by none of them. And somewhere along the way, you quietly agreed that you are not musical, that singing belongs to people with good voices, that dancing belongs to people who look right doing it. So you stopped. Around age 11 or 12, most people stop making the sound and start only receiving it, and the oldest machine you own goes idle in your chest. Have you noticed which moments still get through? The stadium, when 80,000 people sing a chorus no day organized. The car with your friends, all shouting the same words badly. The funeral, the birthday song, the most poorly performed piece of music on earth, which somehow still works every time. Those moments land hard, and you probably file it under nostalgia. It is not nostalgia. That is a 40,000-year-old system switching on for 3 minutes and finding, at last, something to do. So here is the permission. You do not have to be good. You were never supposed to be good. The vulture bone flute was not built for a concert hall, and the people gathered around it could not carry a tune any better than you can. Sing in the kitchen. Sing wrong. Tap the wheel. Hum to a baby, badly, in the dark, the way people have hummed to babies for longer than any language has existed. The system is not grading you. It only ever checked one thing, which is whether you joined in. Put the headphones down once in a while and make the sound yourself, near somebody. That is all it ever asked of you. The beat drops and your foot is already moving. It was never only your foot. It is 30 people under a rock ledge in a cold valley, breathing together, refusing to be separate, and some part of you is still keeping their time.